This is Sunday Focus, a weekly public affairs program that looks at the topics affecting our society and the people who are making a change in the community each and every day. The people who have vision for the next generation. Sunday Focus presents new challenges for us, keeping you informed with topics of local and regional interest. Now the host of Sunday Focus, Christine Manica.
Hello and good morning and welcome back to another edition of Sunday Focus as we are continuing our coverage with Call to Freedom. Call to Freedom is at the forefront of helping victims of sex and labor trafficking navigate a new path. It's not an easy journey, but the hope is through education, others can help those who are being trafficked in our area and state. We've been talking with the CEO and founder of Call to Freedom, Becky Rasmussen, about this amazing organization in a variety of different segments. And the last time we met, we heard Mary's story, Becky, and now we're hearing from Rita O'Brien and also Jordan Massiangelo. I think I got that right, Jordan. Yes, he's shaking his head. Yes. So welcome back, Becky, and we can't wait to meet Rita and Jordan here.
Absolutely. I have the privilege to introduce two wonderful individuals. Not only are they going to share from a survivor perspective, but also what they're doing in the anti-human trafficking world. They're great advocates, educators, and their voices are strong for those that aren't being recognized. And they just appeared at our Hidden in Plain Sight panel. And so I'm so excited to welcome Jordan and Rita to the show.
All right. Hello, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Really happy to have you both involved with this important conversation. And I want you to be able to tell your story from the beginning. First, though, tell us who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Rita O'Brien. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I'm really geeked to be here. This is my third year here. Call to Freedom does a lot of amazing work, and I'm trying to bring back what they do to Michigan because I really wish we could do what they're doing here, there. And, my journey started, I didn't know till 2014 I was trafficked until I went to school. And so I'm just trying to figure out, how, things can change because of back then. Now I know I'm training police recruits in my community. Michigan State Police calls on me with the migrant communities to go help and do some trainings with them. So I'm really geeked that I can go from understanding my trafficking experience by my dad and cult church in the community where I grew up in the 70s and 80s to get help for others that are still trying to unpack their trauma, raise their kids, and have a decent life.
Absolutely. And Jordan, hello, welcome.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good. Tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from.
Sure. My name's Jordan Massiangelo. I'm actually originally from Ontario, Canada. I grew up in the countryside, but I now live in South Florida. I've been there about a decade. I am also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and trafficking as a young man. Now I really love to help different agencies, governments, law enforcement, really understand how to respond to male survivors of sexual violence and trafficking, and really helping providers decipher and understand and respond to the intersection of trauma, masculinity, the male experience, and the similarities and differences of how that can impact the male experience from women and female survivors. Not to make it a versus, not men versus women. It's, what's different and how can we respond actively to male survivors, because there is a lot of us.
Absolutely. And that's a subject that we have yet to unpack. And it really is a big story when you talk about being a survivor of sexual assault. So I want to give each of you the time to share your story and tell us about your journey. Whoever wants to go first.
Here you go, Rita.
All right. Well, for me, I didn't realize, I thought everything in my life was normal. I thought everything that happened in my childhood with being going through not only human trafficking, but domestic violence. So from 3 to 15, 16, I went through sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking and thought it was normal. And I'm I was a weird kid at school. And I remember as I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, in my neighborhood, oh, don't go to Rita's house. Her dad is weird. Well, I didn't know weird meant that my dad was going to rape them, assault them, sell them out at a cult church and men's society and do awful things to them, And when my friend from 4th grade was like, oh, your dad did that to a lot of kids in the neighborhood, he got away with it. The two organizations that did what they did to me got dead away with it, and they still exist. I'm not saying that those organizations both still do that, but in the 70s and 80s they did. I had a lot of asthma, allergies, eating disorders because of it. I went through a phase of self-harm because of it. I still have kidney issues because of what I endured as a child. And one of my doctors ended up molesting me. He got away with it. And so when my marriage ended in 2014, my professor's like, "Oh, you were trafficked." And I'm looking at him like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I didn't go out in front of traffic and play with cars. I was a police officer. I like directing traffic, but like not that way, So then I'm like, no, trafficking, like sex trafficking. And so my dad would sell me out to other men that would come to the house and he'd read this code book to them. And then afterwards, they got to pick me or my sister. And it wasn't until my mom died a year and a half ago, my older sister's like, well, it happened to me too. And I love my sister. I don't hold any, I love both of my sisters and my brother because I really believe the trauma we endured, we were all living in survival mode all of our life. And I hope my siblings can get help because I care about them and they live next door to me. And so it wasn't until my marriage ended, I was finally able to see a really good trauma therapist that helped me unpack this crap from my past. And it made me passionate. I was angry for a minute. I wanted to get rid of a couple of buildings that did awful things to me. I didn't do it, but the thought was there. But, I'm like, okay, so I don't want any other human being to endure what I endured. I didn't get to be a kid. From 3 to 15, like I never got to do the fun things that other kids got to do because if I let friends come over, my dad would do awful things to those kids. So, part of me is like a kid at heart now. Like, I like to do fun stuff. I have a Fisher-Price toy collection.
Oh, that's so cute.
I love it. The little people. They don't make the little people anymore. So I have those and, I have friends over and their kids play with them and stuff. But I found my healing being around other positive people that find what works for them and inspiring other people to get healing. And then as a kid, I was told not to talk to the police because the police would never believe me because I was too pretty and I attracted men. That's what I was told from like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
I didn't ask for what my dad did to me, And so I became a police officer to prove him wrong, And so now I'm geeked because I work for MCOLS underneath Michigan State Police and I get to train law enforcement, the instructor development courses, but then I also get to train the police recruits at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. So now I get to teach them, this is what human trafficking is. It's a 4-hour block. Mm-hmm. And I get to teach them, let's talk about this. We do question and answer. And then I give them scenarios and things like that so we can talk about it. And so that they can be prepared when they go out as a full police officer to look at things differently and get rid of the labels. Don't call that lady a lot lizard. Don't call that guy a lot lizard. They're going around the parking lot. Someone's probably forcing them to. Mm-hmm. Or if a mom is selling out their kid, someone's probably forcing them to do that. Nobody wakes up and is like, oh, I want to sleep with 10 men today. Nobody asks for that. Mm. So I'm really geeked for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan?
Okay, so I'm... Thanks, Rita. My story started pretty early. A long time ago in a far-off land, I lived on a farm. My family, it was really this very typical sort of generic nuclear family. I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters, Roman Catholic, Italian. Mm-hmm. And that dynamic was all beautiful and actually can remember some points of my early childhood actually being quite wonderful. That dynamic was really torn apart when my parents divorced. It really, we were really sort of pitted against each other in the family. The girls took my mom's side, the boys took my dad's side, and it was, whose side were you on for many years. I, being the middle child, the forgotten middle child, I actually refused to take either side. So I didn't... I used to be an extrovert, a huge extrovert as a kid. I was always running around, dancing, screaming. I was always the life of the party as a child. When this happened, I flipped. Not that being introvert is a bad thing, but I flipped completely because I didn't want to take sides. I wouldn't go help my mom. I wouldn't go help my dad. I completely removed myself from the family, which really, as a young child, I'm 8 years old, really changed who I was and how I felt about the world. I also grew up, at the time, I didn't know at the time, but I'm gay. And at the time, I knew there was something different about me, which also played into what happened to me later, I became this kind of sitting duck, this perfect target for a perpetrator. My dad got a girlfriend, his girlfriend's brother, long convoluted story. A friend of the family came into the picture. And because I wasn't participating in my family life anymore, this new person was an older man, and he was kind of everything I wanted at the time. He was a father figure, a best friend, and was just paying attention to me. And I felt that he knew that I had the gay tendencies or homosexual tendencies, but he didn't say anything about it, and I felt like I was safe there. And so I bought his trick, hook, line, and sinker from the very get-go. He groomed me and started molesting me when I was about 12. But it was not a shock. Grooming is a real thing. It is purposeful. I didn't, it was to the point where I believed that we had sort of a secret romance, a secret relationship that I couldn't talk about because, one, he was much older, two, he was a man, and he really made me feel and believe that what we had was actually beautiful, and we couldn't say anything because of the stigma that was going to come out. So he really messed that up in my mind. Once, my mom also remarried, so I was back and forth between these two houses. I was being molested at my dad's house. I was going to my mom's house. My mom had remarried a couple times, both abusive partners. So I was being there was a lot of domestic violence in one home and sexual violence in another home. And so as I started to become older and get more, more awareness in my head about what was going on, especially with the sexual abuse, and that I didn't actually want this or need this, that became more violent as well. And so I had no choice but to leave. I couldn't choose a lesser evil because they were both really evil. So I decided to leave home at 15 and try to make it on my own. So I went to the city, Toronto, and, as most survivors know, trauma's got some sharp talons and it doesn't let go. You can run as fast as you want and it's always going to catch up. And so trauma's talons really dug into my back. I thought I was going to be okay for a while, and I really made a valiant effort as a 15, 16-year-old in a new city by myself to really change my life, but I couldn't. And I fell into addiction very quickly, started hanging around with a lot of people that I shouldn't have been hanging around with. And I had every coping mechanism skill coming out the wazoo. I started cutting. That self-harm became much more aggressive than simply cutting. I was beating myself up. I was really doing some damage physically to my own body, in hopes that someone would notice, maybe take care of me. And it didn't work. And so, I turned to drugs. Everything just piled on top like an onion. So it's all these layers closing on top of each other because I wasn't stopping each coping mechanism before I started a new one. So I would be a cutter, and then when that didn't work, I became an addict. When that stopped working, I didn't stop cutting. I didn't stop becoming an addict. I just kept adding onto the pile. And I fell into sex work, and I became a sex worker in the city. And, maybe that term's not the right term to be using. But for, in layman's terms, that's what I was doing on the street. And again, I thought this made me powerful, that I was taking control of my own sexual life. And in fact, I thought that this was like the cure to the sexual abuse I had endured as a child, was me taking control of this now. But as time went on and as I got a bit older, that wasn't the case. The Johns weren't as nice as they were at the beginning. The buyers started to, better lack of a word, I ended up being raped and abused many, many times by a lot of the buyers. Until one day, this older man again came, and I thought again he was going to save me. And he took me in and posed as a partner. And again, another grooming period happened where I thought this was it. I'm being taken off the streets. This is going to be it now. And then he used my addiction to drugs he would withhold drugs from me. After the grooming process is over, he made sure that I was very addicted to drugs and then would take them away unless I did what he wanted. And then he trafficked me for a couple years following. And it got pretty bad until I just realized that it was die or get out. So I had to find a way out. And I started to very strategically plant seeds where I could free myself from what was going on. And I was successful. Survivors are very adaptable, very strategic. They're very good manipulators. We really know how to work people, work the system, and survive. Like, we know how to survive. Yeah. That's what we've been doing all of our lives. And I got out. I started to get help. And I went to this weekend of recovery, it's called. It's a retreat for male survivors of sexual violence. I went to it, and that's it. It's what saved me. I met other men who had been sexually abused at some point in their life, and I was like, because up until that point, as a male survivor, I was like, I'm the only person this has happened to. And if it has happened to someone else, there's like 2, 3 in the whole world, because I had no awareness, right? When I met these other guys and they weren't, I walked in there thinking they were all going to have 2 heads or be crazy or whatever. Meanwhile, I was the craziest one in there. And I was just like, wow, this is a real thing and I can actually heal from this. And the most beautiful part about that is that organization, 20 years ago, I went to this recovery retreat. I now work at that same organization as their creative director now. Oh, wow. So it's been a full circle. It's quite awesome.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. If you are just listening, we are continuing our coverage with Call the Freedom. Becky Rasmussen, the CEO and founder, is with us, along with survivors. We have Rita O'Brien and Jordan Masiangelo. And you guys, your stories are unbelievable. And I had little points here that I wanted to ask each of you. Rita, since you have the mic, I'll ask you first. You mentioned something about a code book. What does that mean?
So my dad was a Mason. And a lot of people in the Masonic organization get really mad at me when I say Masonic. But my dad was truly a Mason. And there was a code book. Each level of a Mason, there's 32nd, 33rd degree. And there's books they have to learn. And these code books, you and I can't read them because we don't know the code. You have to, and I'm like, okay, so it's a secret society. Why is it a secret if it's such a good organization? And so my dad would do this code book at the dining room table. And he would teach it to the men. And then the men got to come in our room and molest me or my sister. And it bothers me to this day. So when my mom passed away, the first thing I got rid of was that dining room table. And I didn't tell the lady that I gave it to what bad things happened there because I wanted her to have good family memories around that table. But for me, I couldn't look at that table. My friend's like, you just need to take an axe to it. But the code book damaged me in the sense that my dad, anytime I had friends over, he would molest or rape them. He would let the men do things to them. So I stopped having friends over. And, I got rid of all those books.
No, yeah, that makes sense. And then Jordan, when you were talking, it sounded like you knew exactly what was happening. You knew exactly what was going on. And some survivors that we've talked to already, me and Becky, they weren't fully aware of what was going on, but you seemed to be right there in the moment.
It's a weird thing to think about, retroactively, because while I do agree with you that I had this awareness, I couldn't name it as trafficking. So I knew that I was in a bad spot. I knew that this person, for lack of better words, was owning and controlling everything I did, and that I had nothing outside of him. So what could I have done? But I never was able to name that until I started my own healing journey. I was never able to put the word. In fact, the beginning of my healing journey, I actually only focused on the childhood sexual abuse, because I thought that was what I needed to heal, which I did. I do. Healing's ongoing forever, but I did only focus on that. And it wasn't until, honestly, probably 6-7 years into my healing journey and my own recovery that I heard more about what human trafficking was and heard more, listened to another man's story that was so similar to mine. I was like, oh my God, was I trafficked? And then that really started to sink in. And I was like, oh my God, I say to my partner, I was with my partner, my current partner, my husband that I'm married to, he was with me. And I'm like, I think I was trafficked. And it is, it was hard to process because I never connected those dots. I just thought that, you live in this chaos constantly and consistently. You don't know anything else. You don't expect anything else. And so when you sort of get out of that chaos and you start to, put the pieces back together of your life, and you start to heal and you start to enjoy things and learn new things and really find out who you really are. I spent all of the beginning half of my healing journey learning who I was. I had no idea because I had put on a mask for so long that mask just ends up becoming who you are. And you have to really rip that out. You have to peel that off piece by piece to really figure out what or who you are. I can remember in the early parts of my therapy, my therapist being like, what's your favorite color? And I'm like, I don't know. Should I have a favorite color? Is that a thing that people do? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out what my favorite color is. Things that are that sort of, it may seem so simple to your everyday person. To a survivor, it's like, I've never had time to think about what colors I like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? I think I like green. And then to have the agency to also change your mind about those things. I'm like, no, you know what? I don't like green. I like blue. And it was so incredible. I remember too, my therapist at the same time as the color thing was like, okay, let's name emotions. I'm like, happy, sad, angry. There's 3. She's like, no, there's a few more than 3. And so it's like, okay, let's name all of these feelings and then let's feel them. And it was both beautiful and also really, at first it was disheartening. Like, why do I have to learn how to basically just be a person in the world in my 20s? But it was also really beautiful to understand that I can be whoever I want now. I can develop, I can discover what I like. And that's really that, I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but that's my healing journey is rediscovering, or not even rediscovering, discovering for the first time who I like, what I want to do, what I like. And it's been awesome because that's why I try everything. I'm like, do I like fish? No, actually I like oysters, don't like fish. But I'm like, I have no preconceived anything anymore because the entire person I was earlier is gone. And, I'm me now. And it's been really beautiful. So long-winded answer to your very simple question. And naming, awareness of what's happening to you, it can look very, very different depending on who you're speaking to and their own healing journey. But for me, while I was aware that this was terrible, what was happening to me, I didn't know what was different. So I couldn't name it. I didn't know that this is how something should be. So it's an interesting dynamic that survivors often have to grapple with of what is and what I know and what is both appropriate and what should be. So.
Absolutely. I want to thank both of you for sharing your stories. I know it's not easy talking about your past and trauma, but again, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I am sorry for what you both have been through, but now you're stronger, as I can see, out of those situations. And that's when Becky comes to the picture. How did you guys connect with Call to Freedom with Becky?
Well, for me, I still am part of Kalamazoo Area Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition, and Pearl's a great price out of Plymouth, Michigan. I met you through Mary. Mary was at a conference with Teresa Flores, and Mary's like, you got to come to South Dakota. And I'm like, never been to South Dakota. How can I help? Send me there, and I love to travel. So I drove 12 hours to be here this time because my flight got canceled, and I brought my son with me. So it was an awesome trip. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that I've got to meet Becky.
Yeah. And then, Jordan, how do you connect with Call to Freedom and Becky?
I met Becky on another project. We were sort of randomly designated co-chairs of this committee, and we just clicked immediately. And Becky really saw a need for male voices in these spaces. And we just clicked and we've got along. And then I was at another conference and she was also randomly there. And then we were just like, let's hang out the whole time. And it's been a really lovely friendship and work colleagueship. Becky and Call to Freedom are just so devoted to really including survivors and their voices in the development of stuff. And we're not just beneficiaries. We're in there. We're part of it. And that is so important in any kind of survivor work or any kind of trafficking, anti-trafficking work that people are doing, is to have lived experience folks at the table. And I know Call to Freedom and Becky really value that, and they put that at the forefront. And I am so appreciative and honored to be a part of that work. And Becky and Call to Freedom have just fostered that so amazingly. So, she's not going to be able to get rid of me that easy now.
And that's the goal here with these conversations that we've been having, Becky, for the last couple of weeks. We only have a little bit of time left, unfortunately, but I just want to know any message that maybe you have for survivors, or Rita or Jordan, anyone that could be listening right now. What advice do you have for them?
I think one thing that you heard was a common theme between Mary's story and Rita and also Jordan is that they didn't know they were victims of human trafficking. And it was through people sharing their voice that became apparent to them. And there's something, as we live life with survivors and individuals that have been impacted by human trafficking, there's a light bulb that goes off when they begin to realize that they were a victim of a crime. They didn't make that choice. None of these people made the choice to be in that situation. They are a victim of a crime. And that is part of the healing process that needs to be exposed here. Mm-hmm. And so my hope today and my last words, if there's somebody in this community that identifies with the stories that you've heard, we want to come alongside you. Call to Freedom is here to provide support, to allow you to understand what has happened to you, but also to support you in anything that you need. So if you identify with that, you can call our number, which is 605-759-3565. And there are people who are here to live life with you and provide hope.
Awesome. Rita O'Brien and Jordan Masiangelo, anything else that you guys want to add?
I just want to add that, I wish if I could turn back time, I wished I would have had a label for what happened to me. It doesn't mean everyone who's been trafficked is like, oh, I'm going to be a public speaker now. That's not how it is. But give yourself the space to heal for yourself, for your family, for those that care about you, the loved ones. But focus on you and get the proper healing. And don't try to cover it up with overworking or drugs or whatever it might be, because it's not going to help you in the long term. Get help. You're worth it.
All right. Jordan?
The final thing I want to say is that this might be directed at male survivors, or no, it's directed at everybody, but is that healing is absolutely different for everybody. You do not have to necessarily go to a therapist or a psychologist or do this or do that or what you've seen on TV or what you've seen in the news. Everybody heals differently in their own way at their own pace. And the important thing is that you're just doing it and you be consistent with it. Otherwise, all the other factors will vary. Some things will work, some things won't, but just try. Be consistent and do it. If any of our stories resonate with you, it is important that you come forward. You don't have to come forward legally or anything like that. Just come forward for yourself. Like Rita just said, you do deserve it. You are worth it. And there's a reason why you're still here. So be here.
Wow, that's awesome. And then this last question was inspired by Jordan. What's your favorite color? Becky?
My favorite color is red.
Okay, Rita.
I'm purple pink, so I don't know what you named that, but I guess I'm a purpley pink.
Jordan, what's your favorite color today?
So mine has shifted. So I've combined green and blue a little bit, so it's like a turquoise. Oh. A turquoise is now my favorite color. And that may change tomorrow, but right now it's turquoise.
Awesome. Becky Rasmussen, the CEO and founder of Call to Freedom. Rita O'Brien and Jordan Masiangelo, I appreciate all three of you coming for another conversation. And Becky, just give that website for anyone that wants more information about Call to Freedom.
Absolutely. If you want to get involved with Call to Freedom, donate, volunteer, or report to get a training, it's www.calltofreedom.org. Thank you so much for giving this a voice. We're so grateful for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Sunday Focus is a public affairs program of Results Radio Town Square Media, Sioux Falls.